Welcome to Psychology of Pilgrimage. Today I am joined by a very special family along with a colleague of mine in France for a Memorial Day episode that is dedicated to all of our service members who have died in service of their country, but specifically a young Marine named Private James Chism, who was killed on July 18th, 1918, and his remains were never recovered. He remains MIA, and his name is inside the memorial chapel at the Aisne-Marne American Cemetery in Belleau. One of the reasons why I'm so honored to be here during this episode today is because I'm joined by James's family. And it's kind of an incredible story how we came to know each other and how I have had the fortunate experience to become part of a pilgrimage that's unfolding in real time. The first guest is Katherine Gordon, who is the niece of Private Chism. Her father was James's brother. And I was just telling them before we started recording, I don't think I've ever met another descendant that is in such close proximity, only one generation, even though the time has spanned 100 years, but we're really very close with being able to meet and talk to Katherine here. And also joined by Katherine's cousin, Buster Beazley, who himself is a retired Marine, and Private Chism, it was Buster's great uncle. We're also joined by Mrs. Beasley, Liz Beasley, the wife of Buster, who has also just gotten back from a pilgrimage to France. And our fourth guest today is Gilles Lagin, who is a battlefield guide who lives in France and has been walking these battlefields since the time he was a child. And Gilles and I have been on many pilgrimages and many visits together to the battlefields. And he just led Katherine and Buster and Liz on a pilgrimage to walk in the footsteps of their uncle and great uncle. And it is such a privilege to be able to speak to you today. My first question for the family is, how did you first learn about who your uncle and great uncle was, and that his name is commemorated inside the wall of the missing in the memorial chapel at Aisne-Marne?
Well, my brother, who passed away in 2022, he was named after James Chisholm, and he all of his life had just kept that memory alive because of his name. People that knew our uncle would say things to him that they didn't really say it to us, but he was very inspired by him and his Marine service. And my brother also joined the Marines. And I think it was because of this legacy that he joined. Um, so he got us in touch, and also with Buster, with the World War One centennial uh, that they had in Arlington. Well, it was in Virginia at Quantico, and that was in 2018, the centennial. So Buster and my other brother Pat and James, all our families went and attended that, and that was when we learned about Gilles, and because we watched his movie. And we learned a lot about things he had done, and we were like, "Oh, this is what we need to do: is to do this pilgrimage." So it all began then. Uh, but James Chisholm had been like kind of the golden boy of the family. We heard stories of like every time someone stepped on the porch at our grandparents' house, uh, our grandmother thought it could be him. Every time somebody came on the porch, she just always had that hope that he would be coming home. But that sums it up a little bit. And then my brother passed in 22, and we kept saying we were going to do it, but I never could find a way to get in touch with Gilles. I saw some things on Travel Advisor, couldn't find what I needed. And then Amanda and I were together, and I said, let's start looking. And we found the webinar that Heather had. And we were like, oh, and it we had missed it. It was upcoming. So we registered for that. And then that kind of wrapped everything up for us as far as what to do and how to get in touch with Jill. And so uh, that's kind of, and then we got Buster involved too. So that's how it all came together.
I remember when you reached out to me about the webinar that I did. I think it was in April of last year. Gilles and I uh, gave a talk online about the battlefield pilgrimages that Gilles has led hundreds of pilgrims and visitors and family members to the battlefields. And so it was so exciting to be contacted by you and Amanda and to hear about your family's quest to track down James and to find the ground where he had died and definitely where he fought because up to this point the ground was a bit unknown. And Buster and Liz, what probably for you, Buster, you probably grew up knowing all about James, and I'm curious about some of your first memories of hearing about your great uncle.
Well, yeah, growing up, I heard from my mother and an aunt I had who was married to an army guy, and they were stationed in Germany, and she'd actually been to the cemetery and saw his name and everything, and that was prior to me joining the Marine Corps, and then so I heard about it, that way, but not really in depth, and and I'd always wanted to go over there, but then of course, the Marine Corps doesn't have many bases in Europe, so likelihood of getting stationed there was in the cards. So uh, I kept talking about it, and then eventually this came up, and I was definitely all in. And I'll say to go over there and see the terrain that they've fought on, and the amount of real estate is just it's just amazing, and you can't comprehend that by just reading the books about the Battle of Belleau or the history and that aspect of it. But it's definitely um, a legacy I wanted to see, and we're glad to go, and it's well preserved. It's really amazing. But that's kind of how I found out about it, and then the whole time I was in the Marine Corps, I always knew that I had an uncle that served in World War I, and but just didn't know the whole history behind it, and it's really impressive to be over there.
So,
It's uh, somewhat logistically challenging too, I can imagine, to coordinate so many family members who have different schedules and different ideas about what a trip or a family pilgrimage is. And I'm curious about some of the behind the scenes discussions that your family had around what were you going to prioritize while you were there?
well, when we started looking at schedules, um, I I just came up with April. I thought, well, that would be a good time before the crowds are in Paris so much. And then we realized it was his birthday, his 130th birthday on April 9th. And then it was like, oh, we have to be there then on his 130th birthday. So then we planned our time with being in Soissons and the Belleau area on the 9th. And so it all worked out. Uh, so that was our focus once we really hadn't even thought about it being his birthday until we started looking into it.
Gilles, you've done this hundreds of times. People reach out to you. They want to come walk in the footsteps of a relative or someone who is part of the 5th Marines, for example. The unit wants to come walk in the same place as their forebears did 100 years ago. What is your process like when someone reaches out to you and says they want to come visit the Bellawood battlefield, but also other places? What what steps do you walk through between the time that someone contacts you and the time that they are on the ground? We're going to talk about all of the pieces that happen on the ground, but I'm really curious from your perspective how you research the family member and make their story come alive.
Oh, it's a lot of research, a lot of time, documents and everything, checking everything. But I'm really passionate by all this. So for me, it's a great job. I like to do it and then help to remember these people there. So I found a way for this company. I take them everywhere where I went, walk in the footsteps. After I was very lucky to find some archives about this company, about this battlefield, exact location and everything. I did not expect first to find the location of some dead in action there. It was full surprise for me. But I got from Washington a map with location of dead in this battlefield. And we found one very close from his company. So I can't be sure that it's him, but you know, when you do all this research and you are fully digging all these archives, at last you can find something. Yes. But I like to do that. It's my job, and it's to give to remember all these people who died, who are wounded there, who fought there. Yes. It's the only way to do it. Nobody is doing this. Okay, you can do battlefield tour, I mean general tour about everything, but especially about people, personal people. This is the best. Yes.
I'm actually really curious to hear more about who James was. He was a young guy from Kentucky. I've read some of the death file, but I'd love to hear from Buster and Catherine about who he was in your family.
Yeah, I think Heather, back in those days, early 1900s and everything, that there was, I guess they just put out a call for a lot of volunteers to step forward, and he was just one of them. And from what I understand, he was actually an accountant at the time, uh, and gave up his job to volunteer, and then ended up joining the Marine Corps. How that happened, I'm not exactly sure, but he he moved from left home and just and took off. And then there's documents that show some places he did training, uh, and then when he arrived in France and everything. But it's always been amazing that they had thousands of Americans who stepped forward at that time, and he was one of them from a small town in Kentucky, and just somehow got into the movement of volunteering for a cause and joined the Marine Corps. And then, going over there, from what I understand, it's just like shiploads of men, young men, going to support the cause that was going on in France at the time. And he made it over there and his unit was separate from like the expeditionary force that they had with the General Pershing at the time, and so I'm not sure exactly what they were doing when he first got there, but then eventually he made it up to the front lines at that point.
Yes.
So I'm not, but I've always been amazed how he left a small town, even knew about it, and and got into the movement to go support France, and then ultimately gave his life for it.
I understood that he somehow had a federal job. I I really didn't know what kind of job he had. He was an athlete. We have pictures of him with the basketball team. He was also a musician. We have pictures of him with a band. Uh, he also met some people German who spoke German. He learned how to speak German. Uh, these were some things that our Aunt Lillian told my brother about him because he was the one that everyone talked to about James because he was the namesake. We had some other people in the family named after him. Buster has an uncle, Herbert, and because it was James Herbert Chism, he was named after him. I have another aunt who had another James. That name just was, and then he had that cousin also has a grandson named James. So that name just keeps coming up. But he must have been, we just heard wonderful things. And I know when my brother James was in like the third grade, he had a substitute teacher. And the substitute teacher said, my sister was your uncle's, she said, beau and girlfriend. And I know personally this lady, married someone else later. And I went to school with like some of her grandchildren. And, you think, oh, that, things change so much, if he had lived, these people, everything would have been so different. Uh, so that makes it personal too. Yeah.
It's amazing that you have the photos, the photos have stayed in the family of James before he enlisted in the Marine Corps. Did he enlist in 1917 or was it before this point?
It was 1918.
Oh, 1918. Okay.
Yeah, it was that spring. Yeah.
So you all just got back from your pilgrimage. You were there on April 9th to celebrate and honor and remember uh, your uncle and great uncle on what would have been his 130th birthday. Talk me through what the pilgrimage was like from the time that you landed in Paris and then when you went out to did you start in Belleau and Belleau Wood, or where did you start?
Well, we met Gilles. We took the train uh, near uh, Chateau Thierry and met Gilles.
Okay. Yep, I've done this many, many times. I know this very well. So Gilles picked you up at the train station, in the white van. Were you in the white van?
Yes.
Yep. I know all about the white van. And then you all so where did you go after you take the train from Paris to Chateau Thierry? I know this well, the chugging and um what you can see outside the train windows are it's sort of a gradual departure from a very urban environment to a very rural environment with rolling hills.
Yes.
The train crosses the Marne, and out the left side of the train window, as you're approaching the train station at Chateau Thierry, you can see the massive American monument out that window, and then you slow down. You're now in a very rural area with a little tiny platform. if you had luggage, you probably had to carry your luggage up the stairs and then down the stairs.
We
And
actually went to the hotel first and dropped off
you did.
everything.
Okay, all
Mhm.
right, got it. So
We did
everything was
that.
brought.
And the memorial was on the hill right
Yes.
near our hotel. So that
Mhm.
was our first
Okay.
stop on the pilgrimage, was up at the memorial up on the top of the hill, which we could see it from our hotel, which
Yes, and that's
was
a
very nice.
fantastic place to start because you have a very commanding view of the entire valley below, and you can
Yes.
get a really great sense of why this hill was so important.
Yes. And while we went, that was one thing I was not expecting. I did not know about this memorial. Uh,
Oh,
I didn't know about that. I knew about the cemetery and the chapel, but I did not know about the memorial. And then Gilles had some pictures that were like within 20 years after the war when the Nazis were there, uh, standing on that monument. So that was, yeah, that was uh, hard to
those
believe.
pictures,
Yes.
yeah, those pictures are interesting. They're very interesting to see, the graves, in front of the monument and then the Germans standing there. Uh, yeah, there's a lot it's very layered photographs.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you
Yeah.
stopped at the monument, and then did you go to Belleau next?
No.
We went to Soissons.
Oh, okay.
Jill can tell you.
Yeah.
We went to Soissons directly.
Okay, get me on the right track, Gilles. I'm thinking one direction, but I see we're in another direction.
I use the memorial in Cemetery to explain them the deployment of the 2nd Division and what happened before Soissons. Because we have the big map and the monument, so it's a perfect place.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
And after we went to Vierzy area.
Did
So all this farm, Chaudin, all this place where he was walking through everywhere to the last place where he was on the 18th of July.
So
I
Jill,
recorded all places every day and what happened. And we ended in a sugar beet field at Whitfield.
yeah, the map on the monument definitely gives you a lay of the land,
Yes.
and it's a good starting point to kind of give you uh, what was going on at the time,
Mhm.
and then we traveled the landscape from there, which was really nice.
Yes. Anyway, in order, I need to explain you the battle, all the places, and why he went there to Soissons. The only way. Because if you start directly in the battlefield, you can't understand what happened before and why they were sent
Wow.
there on this position. Mm. No, we talk a little bit about Belleau Wood and after the second action for the Marine. After the Man River. Yes. Because if not, people, anyway, in this map, on the memorial, it's mapped for July 1918. So you are directly involved in this story, why they go there, what happened there. Yes, it's very important to show the history and what happens before. Yes. Because if you go directly in Soissons, you can't understand anything. Okay, you're in Soissons in the field and what happened and why. And so I think logic is to go to the memorial first, the Hill 204. For everybody,
yeah,
I do this too. Huh?
Catherine and Buster and Liz, was there a particular place that you thought you would feel really connected
Mhm.
to James before you arrived? I'm wanting to get a sense of what you were expecting, and then how the reality, um, either changed, a perspective or reinforced it, or maybe you found something unexpected.
Yeah, my expectation when we went over there was I knew his name was on the was in the cemetery, I just didn't realize it was on the wall. When you walk into that chapel, it's small. There's so many names up there. It's really overwhelming to see that many are missing in action. And they all had their names up there, which I thought was very respectful. But it's just really moving when you step into that chapel and really get the enormous feeling of how many families are affected from that war and everything. But I think one of my memorable parts about the was about the pilgrimage was as we moved towards Soissons was one thing was that the French still have monuments at the corner of intersections,
Mm-hmm.
uh, uh, recognizing the units that were there, big boulders
Mm-hmm.
that you're not gonna be able to move unless you got a crane, but that they still have things like that that they preserve that recognize it. But we went to this one monument that was right between two roads, and it was at the end of a farm field, and it was a 1918 monument, and these modern day trucks kept going past there, nowadays and everything. But when you look across the street from that monument, there was one of the original villages or neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
They still had the stone wall around it and everything. And you look from there, and I guess that neighborhood was still there in World War One. But when you look back towards the woods, I mean, the woods are miles away. But you look across these farm fields and everything. And then also when we drove into that neighborhood there, and they had a monument in the middle of the roundabout uh, in the neighborhood. You just drive around it, but it was a monument there, and they had a crucifix with it, and everything. I thought, and they still preserved this from back in early 1900s, and I thought that's amazing because I can't think of. It's hard to think of any place in America that's been standing for 250 years, you know, much less a monument kind of like that. So I thought it was impressive, and from that point, you kind of get a look at how much terrain they actually covered to get to that point where we were standing at the time, and along the ways that the French have monuments that recognize the American support there.
Mm-hmm.
Thought that it's very impressive.
Yeah. And that monument, the one you're talking about, is that the one that they had moved from across a road
Yes, is
that
it
was
like
busy?
Falls Fire?
Yeah, they had
Yeah,
moved it, had yeah,
yeah,
so that people could actually access it. Yes.
yeah,
I think, when we were there and we saw the movement of where the troops were, and it was like the vast field and the terrain,
yeah.
uh, the rapeseed fields, the flowers were out, there was wheat, and you could see, Gilles showed us, you see where the woods are, and like Buster was saying, it had to be miles. Uh, we could see it, but it was a long way for them to come, and it did show you how, you know, they could easily be shot because they were coming, and the Germans, yeah, uh, it wasn't a good position to be in as they were coming across those fields.
It's just wide open terrain. Yeah,
Yeah, there was nothing to help block anything. So, but I think being able to know that he walked through that way,
Yeah.
coming through those fields, that was pretty powerful.
It sounds like being in the exact place where your family member was uh, powerful. You said, I've experienced this also. So I can kind of imagine what that was like for you being in this exact spot. Buster, I also heard you comment on something that I think most Americans are actually quite surprised by when they visit the battlefields and visit France, and that is the care that has been taken over a century to remember the sacrifice of Americans um, in France. That has always struck me, and almost everyone I talk to who's been on a battlefield pilgrimage or just as a tourist in this area in northern France has come away with the same thought, which is, wow, we aren't even in our own country as Americans, we don't even give this much care to preserving our history and to remembering the sacrifices of people who have died for our own country. And so it's heartening, I think, to hear you say that because it is so important, and it's remarkable that these monuments and, uh it's not just the monuments exist, I think that's one thing, but it's that the ongoing care, that the French give to these monuments, and then the ongoing commemoration ceremonies or wreath-laying ceremonies that they continue to come back over and over and over, has it's always been a very special part of my experience in France.
I think the
Oh yeah.
other thing, when we went to the cemetery, they were playing taps as we go in. And that's another, they do that every day. Uh,
Yes.
and that was very touching. Also, when we went in the chapel, that was just overwhelming seeing all those names. And I was glad to see they had where they were from, so we could look and see who was from Kentucky and uh, other states. Uh, but I don't think going in there. I knew a lot were killed, but that many being missing in action was uh, just unbelievable that there were that many. And then Jill showed us that the ones that had been found since that memorial was built, they had like an emblem next to their name, and there were very few. Was
Yes, a
like there?
rosette.
Yes, a rosette was by their name, and there were like what, three or four? Very few had a rosette by their name.
Now it's more and more in Soissons, especially. Because in Soissons, lots of them were missing. Infantry, Marines, engineers. And now they're building some plants there. And they found more and more soldiers. Next year, they use 140 hectares of land, and they will dig all this land. For sure, it will be a lot. But this one thing was wrong, like for the second division. Just after Soissons, they left for the Meuse-Argonne area, and they left the body on the ground. Nobody was burying them. So at last, they asked to the French to do it, when a lot of men were missing in action. So 15 days after the fight, it was very hot. Bodies were in very bad condition, and the old French soldiers, the reservists, were in charge to do it. So for sure they did not like too much, but why so much missing, I don't know. I don't know. They buried them in shell hole in everywhere. And now, like the map I show you with the missing in action, nobody's doing anything there. Just where chiefs were missing, it's 9 other American soldiers there. So they knew the location, they knew where was the grave, and nobody's doing it. So this is, I don't know.
Like um, that the people who helped out back then are deceased now, and there's stories that they probably passed on to the next generation. They probably are or maybe not too many of them still left around,
Mhm.
but only the people in that region would know what happened to the bodies afterwards and whether it got documented, and or where it got documented and when it got documented. and they're the ones who can shed light on it. And unless it's a U.S. government and a French government partnership, going back that far is going to be it would be very difficult.
All right, good.
And they need, I think that the U.S. government and the French government need to go in on a joint venture and try to find all the documents they can from that region. Whether they could be in family Bibles back there too, stuff like that, and get it out in the open for that time period. Because the longer we go, every year you go by, the less likelihood it is you're going to be able to find the documentation from that from June, July to November of 1918. So I don't know what we can do to get to that point, but any influence we have with the State Department, the battlefield monuments people, and the French government, whoever else needs to be brought into the mix, should put forth a joint venture and see if what could turn up, and then get back to identifying the real estate that needs to be explored and that kind of thing.
What does it mean to you as a family member to know that your uncle and great uncle is missing, in the sense that he's out there somewhere in this area of France, but his remains have not been identified?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think all the Americans should be brought home and that kind of thing. But we are looking back 108 years, and trying to recreate and find them. But the main thing is that he gave his life for a cause, and that he is still recognized for that. But yet, it would be nice if some remains were identified, uh, and something could be brought back. And back home where he was from in Tompkinsville, Kentucky, they still have they put up a headstone for him. In the town, the city cemetery there. So he has a monument there, but the remains
It's
are
on his parents.
yeah.
It's on his parents' tombstone. They have a spot for him. Also, the American Legion is named after him in Tompkinsville.
Yeah.
It's the James Chism American Legion. I think it's just like there's no closure. Your grandparents didn't have closure. The siblings didn't have closure. I think that's the thing about the missing in action. It's still kind of a mystery of what happened, and where is he, and he didn't get to come home. In the book that Gilles made for us, this one, he does have in here that he was enlisted at Quantico the 2nd of March, 1918. And on the 11th of May, he was attached to Company C Replacement Battalion, and then moved to France on the 31st of May via the USS Henderson from Brooklyn, New York on the 21st of June, 1918. He joined his company, the 18th Company, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marine Brigade, 2nd Division. So he was not there long at all. 21st of June.
Is there a sense that you, in this pilgrimage or in your quest to find the place where James was killed, are you carrying this this openness, this lack of closure from his parents must have experienced. Do you feel that the weight of that? Does it feel like a responsibility that you are inheriting from the last generation?
I think they did not have what we have as far as technology, because if it hadn't been for the technology, we would have never connected all of this. Uh,
It's
they didn't have that,
Yeah.
and much more difficult to get answers at that time. But I'm just grateful that we were able to make these connections, and we just know that our grandparents and parents, would be grateful for all of this information.
Yeah, I think that that seminar we went to in 2018 back in Quantico, um, when they did the presentation and everything, I think that kind of brought it to the forefront or to the front burner, thinking that, hey, it's possible that there could be some identifying items out there that belong to James, and it could possibly be brought home, and to be able to go there and see the terrain and everything gives you kind of makes it a closer connection to what he was looking at, what he went through. But that seminar actually kind of fueled the juices is that a pilgrimage possibly would be possible, and and that more things are come to light, although it was 100 years later, I think. And then we saw during that film that Catherine talked about earlier, that film we saw his name in a notebook when they did used it as um, a frame in the movie, and his name just happened to be right there, and we all saw it in that room in Quantico, which was
Wow.
pretty impressive.
Was the
Yeah,
seminar for families of MIAs, or what was the seminar that you went to at Quantico?
It was a centennial World War
yeah,
One. It was for Marines, anybody that had relatives that served during World War One, but it was more family. Uh, but it wasn't just MIAs. It was,
Okay.
some of these, their grandparents had served or grandfather had served, but, they lived on and, they did not pass. But it was just a lot of information about the Marines in World War One.
pilgrimage is good for pilgrimage is good for families, and try to bring a little closure for areas in your family history that you had a little gap in. And I
Sure.
think it's rewarding to go out there. Um, but it's also, if I know there's still a lot of remains that uh, the government's trying to identify uh, people and stuff like that. And I've seen where they've reunited families with someone who died in World War II, like 80 years ago and stuff. And I think there's still that possibility that a remain could be found and could eventually come back. And I think that we just carry on that legacy of trying to find
Mhm.
to talk about James and to find things that connect him to the next generation.
Yeah, that's right. Because in some cases, remains have been found, and they're waiting to be connected to people who share DNA. So the remains are there, but they're not actually connected to the family yet, which
Right.
is why the DNA situation can be an important part of a family's quest to find their relative. I have to imagine that the 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 team that put on this seminar at Quantico would be really pleased to hear that the information that they shared and the film that they shared made an impact on you, um, so that you became interested in looking for your uncle and great uncle, and then you happen to come in my orbit, into my orbit, and everything that I'm writing about in terms of battlefield pilgrimages and the connection that families have to these places is is reflected in your experience. And so as you're going along, just living and looking for your uncle and great uncle, you're actually your search is making an impact on those of us who are writing or researching, or in the case of Quantico, trying to educate the general population about these Marines who served in World War I. You've had a couple of weeks now to reflect on your journey to France. Where are you what are you thinking about it now? What, if you, maybe it hasn't been enough time to fully process it, but I'm curious about what it means for you right now.
I think we're hopeful, you know, that he can be found. DNA is would be definitely the connection, and that's something they didn't have, not that long ago. To identify remains. I don't know if it's been the last 20 years maybe that people have been using DNA to identify, but I think it gave us hope that something could be resolved potentially. So.
Does it gives you um, better sense of that things are possible, and that you may find an artifact or two that would connect James with his present family, and that things are possible. And the other thing too is that although they haven't done tremendous amount of building in that area, as far as like pouring concrete and stuff over land, so it still gives you that feeling that technology could lend a hand in finding some of the missing. Now who do you contact to get that technology and do the work is out of our arena, but it's definitely something we're interested in, and that it gives you renewed hope that when you look at that area that they traveled, it's really not much concrete and asphalt poured out there. So it, I think we have technology that could survey that land and find actually possibilities of missing soldiers and Marines out there.
And I think after we went on this pilgrimage, we did go uh, to Normandy together,
Yeah.
and to see the monuments there and the cemetery, and uh, it just how the Americans and the French worked together, and how the French have honored those soldiers that gave the ultimate sacrifice. It just kind of brought it together even more, in a different war, uh, but how those countries have worked together in the past. And, we even went, Amanda and I went to a champagne tour, and it brought brought it again, which was not far. It was still in the area, the Champagne region, and they even told about how the Americans, they had the grapes were being destroyed by some type of fungus or something, and the Americans helped them with grafting the grapes, and they saved the champagne industry. So it was just another connection with the Americans and the French. That was good to hear.
Gilles, what's it like for you to be able to be a part of a family story that's active, it's ongoing? This family continues to look for their ancestor. and you are a part of that because you're this link that's connecting them from their home in the United States to the terrain where their uncle and great uncle fought and died.
I'm proud to do it for the family. It's my passion, and you know, I'm very helping. I'm conscious of that. If I was not there, no, it's nothing to see. It's nothing to,
Yeah.
and it's nice connection, and I'm very glad to be able to help this family. Yes.
Well, we greatly appreciate all the work you've done
Thank you.
and your lifetime passion for the Marines and the Belleau area and for World War One. It just it's been so helpful.
Yes.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, it definitely is great to get a firsthand uh, account of, and for somebody who lived on the land and everything, who grew up in that area, it definitely gives as close to a firsthand approach as we can get. And it definitely was a good experience, and it was great to be out there. And it really is amazing what what the French people have done to preserve the uh, the recognition of what the military had done during World War One.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I was just gonna say, Buster and I have been married almost 23 years, and for as long as I've known him, he's always wanted to go to Belleau. So I didn't know the history of it, but he always did. And I know that Gilles was mentioning that he and his grandfather were very close, and he lived the land. He did that. And I think it's a source of pride also for Gilles to be able to contribute to the history and to be able to put a family's mind at ease that someone they love was not completely forgotten. And though the story still remains, for me, for example, to see James Chisholm's name from Kentucky on that
Mm-hmm.
wall at the chapel, for me, made it real because I have no connection other than to Buster. I don't have any connection. But to see that name made it real for me. It's not just some person they were talking about. It was chiseled there. And I think that whole experience closing, it's not a complete closure, but for me at least, it's close enough. And I'm sure that there's hope that maybe through DNA or through more digging around, they'll find it. But I think this was a big step that they didn't have since, what was it, 2018?
Yeah.
When you saw his
Mhm.
name on
Yeah.
the thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. One thing we didn't mention was we went to the Devil Dog Fountain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you bring home some water? Did
Here,
you
We did.
I've got it right here.
Great.
Yes.
Yeah.
That
So
great.
Buster was the one that got to drink since he was the Marine.
Yep.
That's right.
That was good. That's good.
And did you feel the vitality surging through your body?
Yeah. Yeah. Remarkable. But yeah, it's cold water though. Yeah.
Well, I certainly hope that at some point in the future, we'll be able to have another conversation, and that conversation will be about how James Chisholm has been found. And I hear the hope that you're expressing, and my hope joins with your hope. There's something that sort of just looms open and unresolved, and a void, I think, for so many families who have a relative that is missing in action. And so yeah, I join my hope with yours, that something will happen and that through some series of events, James Chisholm will be found and will be brought to rest in a way that is known to the family. Of course, he is at rest somewhere. in some field, probably in France, but how beautiful for your family to be able to know that he is in a marked grave, and this part of your family's history can um, one chapter can close and a new chapter can open.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That's
Thank you
true.
so much for taking time today to talk with me about James Chism, Private Chism, and about your pilgrimage, which started really long before you ever went to France. You grew up with this awareness that somewhere out there was a Marine in your family who was not fully accounted for in terms of his remains being recovered. And then you go to France, you're in the exact place where his unit walked, where the 2nd Division was, and you see his name on a wall, and I can imagine you're carrying with you also, many hopes from past generations. Catherine, I heard you say his mother never stopped looking for him. The family thought maybe he's gonna show up, maybe he will, um, show up at the door,
Mm.
it's maybe not real. Maybe he's really not dead. And so I imagine that even if you're not even conscious of that, you've carried that with you.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
f- and those types of experiences travel with us from generation to generation. And so thank you so much for also allowing me to be a part of your family story. I'll be writing more about your family and your pilgrimage in my book about Belleau and Bellawood pilgrimages. And it's just been a tremendous honor to spend time with you. And Gilles, thank you for being up late. In, uh, to join us, and I look forward to being back in France very soon. And so, yeah, I think it's a very fitting podcast episode to be released the week of Memorial Day. And I think we all do this in memory of Private James H. Chism, U.S. Marine Corps.
Thank you. And
Thank
Thank
you.
you were our connector to Gilles, and Gilles did all the work and the research on our pilgrimage, and we just appreciate all the work both of you've done.